Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2022 film Sorry About the Demon. It's a Shudder original and it's coming to Shudder on Thursday, January 19th. So this is a no spoiler review, just so people know that. Now, this film I feel like is going to hit a lot better for certain people than it did for me. I wanted to like it more than I ended up liking it, but there is a certain charm to the film. So when I say things that sound like I'm not like a huge fan of it, just know that I did like it. I just, and you'll see that reflected in my rating. But I know this is a film that's definitely going to find an audience, and actually probably a pretty large audience. It's just, for me, it didn't hit the way that I kind of wanted it to, because it's a horror comedy, and I have kind of an idea of what I personally would like out of horror comedies, and it wasn't that. Like, it was kind of its own thing. But like I said, there's still a certain charm to it. It is still comedic, but the comedy, it's not like laugh out loud funny. Like the type of horror comedies I like are like the Scary Movies or Tucker and Dale versus Evil, stuff like that. Like, that's my mode. This one's a lot more kind of like low-key, everyday type humor that's very relatable to people. So it's kind of somewhere between like American and British humor, in my opinion. So if that sounds like your thing, this will definitely be your film, in my opinion. It's written and directed by Emily Hagins, who did Pathogen, The Retelling, My Sucky Teen Romance, Coin Heist, a segment for VHS, and also a segment for Scare Package, the segment in the very beginning called Cold Open. And if you've seen Scare Package, you will recognize what's his name? John Michael Simpson, who plays the main character in this film, and he played the main character in Cold Open on Scare Package. So you will know this dude. He's a very good actor. He drives the film forward, because other than him, there's some acting that's just not like the best. But there are other people who are solid. It's really a mixed bag. Like, John Michael Simpson does a really good job. Then there's some people who do a solid job, and then there's some people who are doing not so hot. But yeah, it is what it is. Again, Shudder original coming Thursday, January 19th. Don't want to give you too much of a synopsis. I mean, there really isn't a whole lot to the story. And I think that's one of the big reasons that I didn't like this movie more than I did. Because like I said, like, I liked it. I enjoyed it enough. It's just, I wanted to like it more. And I think for me, it was lacking in story. Like, you can be a horror comedy and still have good story. Like, Tucker and Dale versus Evil actually had good story in addition to just, like, screwing around and being funny at the same time. So this, to me, doesn't really do that. It's just kind of more about, here's the comedy, and it's kind of like an everyday type feel with a lot of stuff you've seen in other horror movies before. But it's not really, like, spoofing them and making fun of them, kind of like a Scary Movie does. It's, like I said, it's its own thing. Like, it's kind of carving out its own little area of horror comedy, which is fine in my opinion. Like, that's cool. And like I said, some people will see this and be like, oh man, like, I want more of this type of stuff. I'm sure people will. So quick synopsis. It's basically about a family who finds out in the very beginning that they have demons in the house, or at least one. And they're like, can't really get rid of the house. The demon wants a soul. So what do? They decide to rent the house out in order to provide said soul. So the demon will then leave them alone. Then introduce our main character, who's played by John Michael Simpson. And he's the kind of unassuming dude who walks into this situation. And it's really just about him dealing with this situation. And this is on the heels of his girlfriend having broken up with him. So that kind of plays into it as well. Right out of the gate, there's some acting. Like I said, it's a mixed bag. John Michael Simpson's the best. There is some acting, and there's some better acting. There's some very unstable camera work that ends up showing up in this, primarily in the beginning of the film. And it's just something that miffs me. Like, I just don't understand it this day and age, because there are tripods and you can easily do that. Like, I understand, like, wanting to get, like, a little bit of, like, a grittier, more gritty feel, like, doing handheld. But, like, if people can't hold it still enough, that's not the greatest idea. Like, just use the tripod. So that's something that bothered me a little bit in the film. You can tell early that the writing is good, especially the dialogue. The dialogue is very well written. Hagins has a really good knack for writing dialogue that seems very realistic, and it's also interesting. And also witty at the same time. There is that wit within the film. So the writing is good, it's just I feel like they needed to incorporate a lot more story. There's a cool animation for the opening credit. I really enjoyed that. It's kind of like throwback, old schoolish. Remind me a little bit of like the animation style that was for like I Dream of Jeannie, the beginning of that film. Just saying. But it's in color. John Michael Simpson from Scare Package is in this, and his acting is not only good, it is fun. He does a good job of having a fun character, a lot like the character he was in Scare Package. So if you liked his performance there, you will like his performance in this. A lot of the time it seems more quirky and light than comedic itself. This kind of goes to what I was saying, that it's not the style of horror comedy I want or I expect from the term horror comedy, but it is kind of like quirky and charming and very light in the way it is. So, might be your thing. There's a reoccurring thing with cake in this film that kind of seems like it goes to a level of being not interesting enough to be reoccurring as much as it's reoccurring, to be honest. Like, it's going throughout the film, and you're just like, is this supposed to be funny? Like, maybe to some people it's funny, but I didn't find it funny, like, at all. Like, I just wasn't a big fan of that. There's a lot of familiar haunting and demon stuff. Like I was saying, there's not a whole lot of story, but there are a lot of things that you've seen in other horror films that kind of deal with this stuff, with like hauntings and possessions and demons and that type of stuff. Like, it, other than the charming, quirky, comedic aspect of the film, it's not bringing anything new, really. Like, and that was kind of like, that's kind of where I started falling out of it and being like, oh, well, this isn't as interesting to me. Especially because for me personally, the humor was too low key to the point that it wasn't really satisfying me, you know? But, you know, not everyone has the same humor. It has pretty slow pacing, but just about all of the comedy is in the dialogue. That's another thing. Not a lot of stuff really happens in the film. It's very dialogue driven, which is a reason that it's good that the dialogue is well written. But I mean, in that sense, it definitely feels like a lower budget film, because in a lot of lower budget films, they can't show you too much. They have to tell you a lot because they don't have the budget to show you. So it's very dialogue driven, and this film is that way. So if you like a more talky film, that's fine. This might very well be for you, especially if you like the version of humor that they have. And like almost basically all the comedic stuff is dialogue based. I didn't see anything that was really funny that was like physical or that showed up in the film outside of dialogue. So it's very much focused on comedy through dialogue. And that, like I said in there as well, slow pacing. The pacing is pretty slow. It's like an hour and 44 minutes with the credits. And I'm going to be honest, that is too long for what this film is. Yeah, but some people love that. There's actually a well-done, sweet moment in this film, because there is, at the heart of it, a little bit of a romance that had gone on that tries to be rekindled, stuff like that. So Hagins does a really good job of kind of putting that moment, and you'll know when you get to it, putting that moment together and like making you feel invested and making you feel something, and it was just really well done. Especially the music accompaniment really helped, the acting really helped. In the end, I just feel like the story's not very compelling for me personally, but it's not a bad film. It's still a good film. Like I said, people are gonna find this fun. A lot of people will. So anyway, out of 5 stars with half stars in play, I'm going to give it a solid 3-star rating. I think it is a good film. I don't think it's a great film. But then again, you can give me your opinion if you feel differently about it. Either way, if you like it or you don't like it, go ahead and put it in the comments. You can do spoilers in the comments too. That's totally fine. But do me a quick favor, hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I would greatly appreciate that. Also, hit the notification bell button, because then you'll know when I'm putting up new videos. And I really thank you for, joining this nerdy horror community that I'm creating here. So especially if you aren't subscribed, join up. A lot of commenting and replying going on. I try to reply to almost everything, so stay engaged. But thanks again for taking your time to watch this particular video, and until next time, keep it brutal.